Now, I have to just start off and say that EPA really don't have an energy policy. Well, actually we do. EPA's energy policy is to promote renewable energy on contaminated lands. Okay, and that kind of works hand in hand or encompasses our mission to protect human health and the environment. Beyond that, the Department of Energy is who sets all of the energy policies for the United States. Now, this presentation, since I've been here today, I've seen a lot of very, very good information. I'm so glad that I'm here. So, the better way to understand my presentation, I just figured first that we need to there's some terms that we need to kind of understand. So, the first one would be the Clean Air Act, because these are the tools that we use to protect the human health and the environment so that we can promote the renewable energy from contaminated lands. The Clean Air Act was passed so that EPA gave EPA the responsibility and actually gave us a means to protect the air. The same thing with the Clean Water Act, so that we have to test the water so we can make sure that the drinking water is fine, and also the amount of pollutants that goes into your wastewater streams. Because, like you say, we live in a society, our waste has to go somewhere. Then there's the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, better known as CERCLA, but Superfund is what most people go by. What that really said was, sorry, I'm a little bit ahead of my slide. For the first time, there's a fund, a trust fund that's set up. So if you pollute, you should be held accountable for that cleanup, okay? That's the first time. Superfund, that's a very big stick that the government have now with Superfund. So that if you pollute, you should be forced to clean up if we can trace it back to them. But oftentimes you'll get companies that come in, and like most things that happen, even EPA was formed after land got contaminated. So most of the time you would have these hazardous waste sites that's already up, and we have no idea who did it. That's why there's a fund that companies have to contribute to, and this Superfund, well, that's why they call it Superfund. That's the money that we will use to clean up the facilities. But believe me, if they can trace it back to you, you're going to reimburse that. Then, hazardous waste control and record keeping, we got RCRA was one of the laws that we get at. For the first time now, EPA had the authority to control hazardous waste from cradle to grave. In other words, from the time that you manufacture this waste to the time that's disposed of, that comes under RCRA. And the Toxic Substance Control Act, that's an act that was passed that for every new chemical that comes into the United States, EPA has to catalog, record those chemicals. You can't just ship anything here, okay? So we have to really, there's an inventory, toxic substance inventory, that EPA keeps for every new chemical that comes into the United States. Then, in the wake of the Exxon Valdez accident, we have the Oil Pollution Control Act. And that, all of this stuff happens behind the scenes or afterwards. And I'm sorry, but that's pretty much the way the government works. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Something happens, then we kind of pass laws so that we can say that it don't happen the next time. But the Oil Pollution Control Act established provisions and actually gave us the money so we can go in and try to prevent oil spills from happening, and if they did, try to clean those up. NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. And I'm just saying this because you'll see this in other parts of my presentation, and I didn't want to get into them with a lot of acronyms and people not know what I'm talking about. But the National Environmental Policy Act says there's goals for protection, maintenance, and enhancement of the environment. And like I said, it also establishes a process by which federal agencies must study the environmental effects. If you see there's something that's called, now I'm in front of you guys and I'm losing the words for it. Environmental impact studies. That's part of NEPA. So that we can't just go in, and they should. Under NEPA, that's where they should. If they're planning on putting something into your facility, into your neighborhood, they have to do an environmental impact study. Of course, now, like a lot of stuff, we don't have people that show up at those meetings. So it's activism. That's why we do need to mobilize ourselves so that we can do that. And that leads right into the Civil Rights Act. Believe it or not, we can't just dump everything. You do see that's happening, you know, because, and some of this stuff, like I said, was happening way before the EPA came, but because of these, armed with these laws, we're trying to right. At least that's the way it's supposed to be going, trying to right as many wrongs as possible. Now, new state energy programs, there are some other terms I wanted people to see, and I was kind of expecting more people here, but each one of the states has their own policy, rules, and regulations, just like the federal government does. In Arkansas, these are some of the policy, rules, and regulations for the state of Arkansas.
And just to interrupt, these handouts that I'm giving you are definitions of all of those states, but it also tells you state by state what the policy, rules, regulations, and financial incentives are.
Okay. And I'm just going to go through these pretty fast. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but they are in your handout. But there are some incentives to use to do the same thing. Same thing for Louisiana, and I actually put this in because I wanted people to see for every one of these states what type of rules and regulations that they did have, rules and regulations on the state level. We're at the federal level, but there's rules and regulations that you have to follow state-wise too. And there's also incentives to renewable green energy. Some of the stuff was here in Texas recently. If you were to buy a new energy efficient, well, I just put new windows in my house. You can get tax credits for that. If you buy a new washer and dryer. So some of those things were federal and some was at the state level. The state of Texas actually had that going on too. The same thing, same type of thing applies to all of the states in our region. Now, brownfields. You might hear that a lot, and this is really the term what brownfield means. It means any real property, or if you're going to expand or development of property, or reuse the property, and it could be hampered because of the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. It's brownfield. It's not green, you got all over the place, or it was a waste site, brownfield. And there are incentives that the government have if you were to convert some of that land from a brownfield to do renewable energy there. And we need to learn more about that because those are opportunities for entrepreneurship, and actually that's going to be very, very big, starting with this administration, probably more so than it's ever been before. Now, some of the things we want to talk about is greenhouse gases too. And in a nutshell, greenhouse gases are just gases that trap heat in the atmosphere. The Earth is powered by the solar energy comes through from the sun, but it also is reflected back. When we get these greenhouse gases like carbon monoxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and the fluorinated gases like the Freon that's in your car, that's why we have that, or the Freon that's in your air conditioning unit, that traps the heat in the stratosphere. So when we get the energy down from the sun, it's not going back out. So what happens? That's where the global warming is coming from. Slowly, we're getting warmer. And that's a whole new pile of stuff that'll happen because then you get the polar ice caps, the water levels going up. We're talking about well, it's just another topic, a big topic, but it really makes a big difference. Like I said, now there's a lot of opportunities from the renewable energy on contaminated land. EPA set up launched an initiative in 2008, I think it was December 8th through the 11th, 2008, that was called Repowering America's Land. And in Region 6, that encompasses these 5 states, we held a conference called Brown to Green to make the connection for renewable energy. And from that, they had the development opportunities. They developed opportunities on EPA track sites. And again, that's where I wanted you to understand for brownfield, superfund, abandoned lines, and regular lands. EPA is responsible for those. And to date, we've mapped over 13 million acres of EPA, land that's under EPA's watch, contaminated land. Land that they have development opportunities to really convert. There's a lot of advantages to these sites because a lot of these sites are already near existing infrastructure. There's already transmission lines or railroad lines there. So if you were to try to maybe make some type of business with them, because most of the time these are sites that were in production that went bad. So If we can reclaim some of that back, that will lessen the portion where we would have to go into green communities like where you were talking about. And we can reclaim some of the land that's already messed up, if you don't mind. Then we don't have to go into those communities. We can put that land, clean that up, use those sites, okay? Like I said, setting the renewable energy from these sites can help offset the greenhouse gas emissions, increase the economic value of the land, and it actually might have a lower economic cost than trying to do the same thing with land that's already habitable by the citizens. And there's a tremendous amount of energy that can come from this land. The potential is there. Here's some examples that we had. The Molly Carp, that was a 1 megawatt photovoltaic solar facility. It actually got completed. I think the photovoltaic installation was complete February the 11th, well, February of 2011, not necessarily 11. And this electricity now is being sold to Carson Electric Cooperative, and it's the largest concentrated solar voltaic facility in the United States, and that's in New Mexico.
Can I get the name of it?
Sure, I'll leave a number, address so we can do that. Okay, another one would be Pantech Superfund site near Amarillo, Texas. Now this one hadn't started because a lot of, it's actually been put on hold because of budget issues. We were projecting a startup that could save maybe 10 to 15 megawatts of power to in the Panhandle. So, and this is going to be for a solar farm. And I'm sorry, not solar farm, a wind farm. They were thinking that we start up, we get maybe save 10 to 15 megawatts of power that would generate, but they were expecting it to expand to maybe generate as much as 75 megawatts of electricity. But that's, if the funding gets available, it's held up now, like I said, because of budget issues, and the whole country's going through that right now.
Did this create funds for the university?
There's a lot, yeah, there's going to another, I'm going to give a website that we can actually go to and see that type of thing. Okay? Now, there's a lot of stuff, renewable energy. Where do you start? A lot of terms, like I said, rules, regulations. Well, one of the tools that we set up for that was a joint EPA and Department of Energy. This NREL stands for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is a joint venture with EPA and the Department of Energy that produce interactive maps. There is something that's called Google Earth. Now, I think most people have seen where you can go in and put your address on Google and you can see these maps. But if you go in for this one, you actually can download a program called Google Earth. It's free, okay? And it can see, it's used to satellite images for basically anywhere in the world. So, well, let's just say here one thing. It'll show this incentive that we have, not the incentive, but this Google Earth map will show whatever address you put in there, just like the regular Google, but this time it will show where the hazardous waste sites, the regular sites. I encourage everybody to go and put your own address in there. I do that because I want to know what's near me, okay? There's some state-specific maps that's at this website. This website that you see at the bottom, epa.gov/renewable land, was one of the tools that came up from that. And here's an example of one of the satellite images. See these little red dots? And if you look at this, I don't see all, well, maybe you can see it better there. And that is a much older picture because actually if you were to pull that up now, you'll see red, green, orange dots everywhere. So there's really a lot of waste sites that we are responsible for right now. You click on one of those dots, it'll bring up a report because all of our information is public knowledge, okay? So you wonder what happens to all that place. Well, this is where you can go and find out because anything that EPA gets, we disseminate that to the public. So you click on one of those little dots here, and it'll tell you exactly what it was. This one was particularly Canyon Park in Canyon City in Colorado. But I said, why don't we go somewhere closer to home, like New Orleans? Places that's actually in our region. And so I did. I want one of these for each one of our states that we're talking about here now. And I picked this one in the city of Monroe for a Progressive Property Church. You look there and you can actually see that EPA ID, a brownfield acre ID. That's the number, that's what region it is. It tells you everything pretty much about that, state incentives and policies, so that you can see what's going on in your area. Like I said, if you put your own address in, you see those little dots, click on one of those. You'll find out anything that EPA knows about that site. And I just did the same thing. I'm from the city of Pine Bluff, and that's why you see the city of Pine Bluff there. And I did the same thing. There are some EPA tract brownfields near where I grew up. And this is again just an example so that we could see that this do work for everywhere. And I'm going to move fast through these because I did them for all of the states. Because I didn't want anybody that would be here, make the journey to come, to feel like maybe we did not have that type of information. Now, like I said, this is a very powerful tool. You put any address in. I put this address in. See, that's the Crown Plaza Hotel because we're actually using satellite images. So this is the same thing we did when the oil spill was out, where we could actually see what's happening out in the Gulf. And this is zoomed out a lot because I could have actually, see these little things that look like cameras? You can actually do a ground view where I could have clicked on that and you could actually see the front of the building. Okay? So if there's a hazardous waste site or something in your area, or Doctor, like you were saying, this new spot, that's a good way for you to take a look and see what's going on. You can see the size of it because it's a satellite down. You'll see exactly what's going on there. Now, for all of the states, we're talking about the potential that's there. This is from biopower. The biopower, and you see the dark green would say where it's excellent, and the darkest one would be outstanding. And then you still see the RCRA brown spot, the RCRA, the little orange dots there, and that's for each one of the states. And again, I just wanted to make sure that nobody was left out so that everybody could see that we're capable of tracking that. Now, that website that I gave you a moment ago, epa.gov/renewable lands, there's a lot of incentive and information on that website, like state-specific fact sheets, funding sources, loans, grants, bonds, tax abatements, deductions, credits, technical assistance availability, individual state maps with the solar, wind, and biopower potentials, and that was one I just showed you, the biopower potential there. This is an example of one of the same type of information I'm going from that's actually pulling it up from the Department of Energy. Actually, no, this is from EPA's website, the Renewable Energy Land, and for the state of Arkansas. Now, state of Arkansas, and it's telling you some of the incentives if you go there. The same thing for each one of the states once again. Okay. All right, well, I was trying not to bore everybody with the same type of information going over, because a lot of the stuff that I want to say has already been presented in other slides. And now one thing I do want to leave us with here, for more information you can go to this website, Repowering America's Land website. That's the one where most of the information came from. And also, specifically for this 5-state area, you go to Region 6's Land Revitalization website. And this would be the URL there. Rob Lawrence, who was not able to make it, he is actually the Senior Energy Advisor for Region 6. So this is his contact information. And Bridget Lowry is pretty much the same type of contact, but that's on a national level. And of course, if none of that works, this is my contact information. If there's ever anything that you want to know from EPA, just feel free to call or contact me, and I will channel it through whoever needs to get the information. Now, let me just say one thing. this is not what I normally, well, sometimes I do, but I'm a bench chemist, 32 years at EPA. I took part in the Challenger, when the Challenger accident happened. I was out in the field. Oftentimes I do the same thing for Katrina and when we had Hurricane Rita out. So I'm out in the field looking for abandoned hazardous waste that may be washed up after Hurricane Ike. So to me, it's very important that we have these type of outreach activities. I was telling, that was part of Jackie. I was talking to Jackie about that. And that's why when we couldn't find anybody, I kind of jumped at the chance. Like I said, if I wasn't sitting here, I would definitely be sitting there. A lot of times I think disproportionately, just like the doctor was saying, we're the victims. But that was way before now. And that can all change. But it won't change unless we educate ourselves, we get active, we petition our politicians, we elect politicians who have our interests at heart. Okay? So it's going to take a consolidated effort from all of us. You know, when there's meetings like this that's going on, it's good if you can come, but also good if you can bring somebody else with you. Okay? Because we're all in this together. Believe me, there's no more land. There's no more land. And the waste has to go somewhere. Now, where it goes, don't have to be in your backyard, but you're going to have to say something about that. And I've always been a firm believer that no action, to take no action, actually is to take action. Okay? If we want to say who wants lunch, if you don't say that thing, they're going to assume that maybe you don't want it. The same thing happens when they say that we're going to put this toxic waste dump in this corner. If the people in the corner don't say anything about it, that's where it's going to go.
Mr. Man, that kind of reminds me of this drilling in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
It happened all of the earthquakes lately. I mean, earthquakes everywhere. And they had all the drilling for oil and all of this. You probably seen it on the natural gas lines. And so, yeah. So, you know, the people started complaining about it. And they stopped them temporarily. Because, I mean, they was having up to 4-point earthquakes. You know.
Yeah. Well, like everything that happens, it's going to be trade-offs. Okay? And you just want to make sure that you're not on the wrong end of the trade-off. And that means that you're going to have to educate yourself. Reading, like I said, it's time for us to get real, I like to say. Because the time is over. There used to be, when I was going to school, it said reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, now we have to move past that. When I say get real, because not only do we have reading, writing, and arithmetic, now we need to educate ourselves so we can empower ourselves. We got to get activists once we do that, and then we can lead our way out of that. So if there's any questions, this is not what I normally do, but I'll be happy to entertain any questions or refer any question that I might be able to answer.